Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and the year is almost nigh. I mean, we only have a few days left until we officially hit 2025. That is just absolutely insane for me to think about. If you ask 10-year-old me, 2025 just seemed like such a far-out, futuristic number. Time really does just fly, but to me, to you, I genuinely hope that you had a great year, and hope next year is even better. However, it's always interesting to look back at how the year unfolded, and I think 2024 has definitely been one of the more bizarre years for gaming. I feel like there's been a lot of negativity this year from within the community, and a lot of gamers have had mixed emotions about some of the games that's released and just where the industry is going next. But there has been one exciting trend that's been bubbling up in the background across multiple publishers, and now there's some hope that this will soon include Sony thanks to a new comment that they recently made. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that I'm reading this the same way that some other people are, but I will go and talk about that today because this could potentially be very exciting for longtime gamers. So stick around and we'll get into all of that. And then plus, we also got another tease for a big AAA Xbox game, possibly for the Switch successor as well. The fans have been requesting for years and years. Let's just go and jump right into things, though, starting off with Nine Sols. I mean, we can talk about this game or that game when it comes to 2024 releases, but Nine Sols has quietly been one of the better games that's released this year. I mean, if you like Metroidvanias and if you like a challenge, then Nine Sols is an absolute gem of a game and very possibly just one of the best games within its genre, period. In terms of quality, it goes right up there with your Metroids, the Ori series, and even Hollow Knight. But one thing that those games have that this game doesn't is a physical release. I mean, for such a good game, you know, it'd be nice to have a physical version. And, well, Fangamer has our backs. They recently announced a physical Switch version for 2025. Now, we don't have an exact release date just yet, but we can go over to their website and sign up for a notification. And I actually really do like this partnership. I've ordered from Fangamer before, and not only was it a seamless experience, but I also like that they don't limit their items as much as you see from some of these other companies that likes to capitalize on FOMO. You know, as one such example, Fangamer also sells Hollow Knight on their website. They sell Tunic and games like that, and even all this time later, these games are still available for purchase. So if anything else here, if you like Metroidvanias, definitely keep an eye out for this game because it really is one of the best attempts for this genre. Now, speaking of games that are just absolutely excellent, there's very few games out there that I would put in the same echelon as NieR Automata. It's easily an all-time great and an all-time favorite for me personally, which is why I'm just so thrilled to say that it's officially surpassed 9 million copies sold worldwide. What's kind of crazy about this, though, is that this is actually the second big milestone the Square Enix reported for Automata in just 2024 alone. Their last update for it was back in February when they reported that it sold 8 million copies. So that means that it sold an additional 1 million units within just the last 10 months, which is extremely impressive for a game that launched 7 years ago. I mean, if you think about it this way, NieR is putting up Final Fantasy-esque numbers, which is often viewed as Square Enix's biggest franchise. So the future seems really bright for this franchise, and I think the only question now is, when are we going to see the next NieR title? You know, it's bound to happen at some point, and again, considering it's been 7 years, soon to be 8 years since Automata, it's likely going to be sooner rather than later, and we might even get news in 2025. Okay, so let's go talk about PlayStation and this trend that we've been seeing these past 12 months. Companies are starting to learn that they have a treasure trove of IP that gamers would very much like to play again with a brand new title. You know, nostalgia is a very powerful marketing tool. You know, just ask Nintendo. They do a fantastic job with this type of stuff. But we are starting to see companies like Sega, Capcom, and even Konami. You know, they disappeared there for a while, but all of these companies are starting to tap into their beloved back catalog of games. And because of that, we probably have more beloved revivals to look forward to over the next few years than we've had in a very long time. And a lot of these games are from franchises that fans have been begging for. Games like Jet Set Radio, Okami, Crazy Taxi, Shinobi, Turok, Ninja Gaiden, Metal Gear Solid, and so many more are set to make a return in the near future. And I believe this is just the beginning of more to come. Companies are really starting to try to better utilize their franchises and not to just let them simply be forgotten to the curse of time. And I know a lot of fans out there would love for Sony to jump on board for that as well. I mean, if you want to talk about a company that has a treasure trove of beloved IP, I mean, Sony has to be near the top of that list. And Astrobot made that crystal clear for a lot of fans. Over the past few months, there's been a conversation about Astrobot being a potential Smash Brothers situation for Sony because it kind of brings recognition to all of these different franchises in a similar way. The only problem, though, is that for the vast majority of characters that appear in Astrobot, they're from franchises that haven't received a new game in a decade plus. Well, Sony's Herman Hulst was asked about their back catalog in a recent Famitsu interview, and this is what he had to say. The various IPs that we own are an important asset to PlayStation, and as a part of our efforts to strengthen our portfolio, we are continually looking at opportunities to leverage past IP as well as develop new franchises. Now, honestly, I don't know if I necessarily view this answer the same way as some people have made it out to be. I've seen a lot of reports make it out like this is him being open to classic revivals, but I didn't really read it that way. To me, it really just kind of comes off as a non-committal answer. It's vague, to say the least. And in fact, in this same interview, he seemed much more inclined to commit to the things that they've already been doing, which are live service games and story-driven AAA content. He referred to Helldivers 2 and said that Sony will continue to focus on developing live service titles along with the story-driven single-player titles that our players want. So I just think that it seems like their plan is to do more of the same that we've seen throughout this generation. It's going to be mostly live service and AAA story-driven blockbusters. And until they start to show us something different, I mean, actions speak louder than words, then I don't really think that this interview changes my own personal expectations. I'd like to say that it would because I would love to see a lot of these old franchises return. I've often said on this channel that PS360 generation was my favorite generation, and that's in large part because of the exclusives that PlayStation made during that era. They were just so insanely creative during that era. Now, I hope that Astrobot has proven to them that gamers want those type of games again. It's done very well for Sony, and by all indication, it appears to be an evergreen title that will sell well for them throughout this generation. So I'd like to think that will spark a fire with them to greenlight more of these type of games, whether that be Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, a new Ape Escape game, or, any other number of games that we haven't seen from them for such a long time. I think the thing that really kind of gets to me with Sony is that it feels like they are in this go big or go home type of mentality. These games might not necessarily sell as much as some of their big AAA blockbusters, but these games also cost a lot less to make, so they don't really have to sell the same amount. Now, at the same time, though, I don't know if they necessarily have the right studios to make these type of games, but maybe they could kind of take a page out of Nintendo's book. Recently, Nintendo has been partnering up with a lot of third-party studios to bring life into more games. That's how we got Luigi's Mansion 3 this generation, Mario and Luigi Brotherhood, and Metroid Dread. Those games turned out pretty well for the most part, and it seems like they do have more partnerships coming down the line as well. So maybe Sony could do something like that and license out some of their beloved franchises to third-party companies. I think the most baffling thing for me, though, right now is just that Sony wants to commit to this very shaky live service future, but at the same time, they haven't really utilized games like Killzone, Resistance, or even SOCOM. I mean, I kind of feel like these would be no-brainers with this type of focus, yet here we are, and I don't know. I question whether Sony has a good strategy in place for their first-party lineup. I used to blame Jim Ryan for all of this, but maybe Herman Hulst is just as much the problem. Now, one last thing before we go, though. Square Enix has once again teased Final Fantasy VII Remake for more platforms, and they may have even given us a loose timeline as to when it'll be available for Xbox and very possibly the Switch successor as well. Now, this was done in 2 different interviews, so we'll kind of go over this one by one, starting off with the response on how Rebirth sold. They said, while we are confident and pleased that we are reaching a certain level of sales, it is clear that with modern gaming, we cannot be exclusive to a single platform. I think we need to offer the game to as many players as possible. I mean, Yeah, his answer seems pretty clear to me. I don't really think that Square Enix was thrilled by Rebirth's sales results. It might not have necessarily been bad, but it still wasn't within their expectations, and they believe that's because they limited it to just a single platform. Square Enix has made it loud and clear that they want to be a more multi-platform company going forward, and this answer once again echoes that sentiment. They fully believe that multi-platform is the most promising road for Square Enix and their games. Even more so is that in a separate interview, they said, "We are currently working on the final game in the Final Fantasy VII Remake series, and the entire development team is working hard to make it a suitable finale. Next year, we will continue to take on the challenge of making the Final Fantasy VII Remake series available for more gamers to play, so please continue to support us." So, once again, I think we kind of have our answer here. This is like the 5th time this year that Square Enix has teased Final Fantasy VII or even Final Fantasy XVI for more platforms. They're absolutely done with exclusivity. I mean, some of Part 3 will depend on what kind of deal they sign with Sony, but as for the first 2 games, it's really just a matter of when rather than if they'll come over to more platforms. And based on how they worded this response, we very well might get 7 Remake for Xbox and maybe even the Switch Successor as early as 2025. And I think that's amazing news because, well, these are amazing games. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.